Sorry, I think he got distracted. Manny? Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
At this time, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Facilities Subcommittee. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Tarantino?
Here.
Arancibia?
Here.
Is that it? Okay. The next item on the agenda is public communication on posted items. Yoli, are there any speakers?
There are no speakers.
Okay, then we will go ahead and move to item C, items for discussion. And Janaea, will you please take over?
I will. Thank you so much. So thanks for joining me and everybody else today. I wanted to take an opportunity with the transitions at the board Dr. Aguirre's in the house and introduce Trustee Arancibia to the subcommittee process and what we do, and start the conversation for us, and then ultimately have you two engage with me as we go through this and by the end of today and talk about how often we want to meet, and then that will help me kind of set my pulse for information that I gather for you, et cetera, as we move through this next fiscal, out of this year and in through the next fiscal year. So Dr. Gary is jumping on. I don't know. I will default to him for a second to see if he has anything that he wanted to say. I know he'll be moving to another meeting. So Dr. Gary, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to chime in about or talk about before we get started, a little off the cuff, or if you want me just to go ahead and proceed.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jeanette. I really appreciate the opportunity for our staff to present kind of some updates. It's been a while since we've convened in the facility subcommittee. So we have some progress on a couple of existing projects and then some new information in terms of new projects. So we wanted to make sure that we process the information here, also provide an opportunity to Trustee Arancibia to get familiar with the work of the facility subcommittee and the projects that we have currently approved and kind of where their status is. So really that's the focus of today, to provide some updates. And then get feedback at those key points. But really, it's an opportunity to provide an update since it has been a while since we last convened. Yeah. So I know that Janaea is amazing, and she'll provide a great update in terms of the projects. And I'll be here for about half an hour, and then we have a meeting with principals that I kind of have to jump off to. So I'm teaming and zooming, and it sounds like a Dr. Seuss riddle, but But thank you. So, Janaea, it's all yours, and I'll be here for support.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Gare. So I'm going to start with staff updates. We have a very lean crew, as everybody, right? When the SERP happened, there was certainly a reduction in staff, and we have had a continued reduction in staff. So for the last 2 years, we went from 3 project managers to 2. And then since September, we've been down to 1. One of our project managers moved out of state. And so Armando Murillo is still with us, and he is the project manager extraordinaire right now. He has definitely been like my right-hand person in terms of balancing a pretty significant workload. We are in the pursuit of onboarding another project manager. There's not a lot of folks out there that have the skill set, the desire to be in the school systems, and so finding that match is something we're working towards right now. And then the other staff update that we have is that we are in the process of hiring what will ultimately be our 4th planning specialist. So the planning specialist helps support the project managers in various elements of the planning and construction department. And so we hired somebody just recently, Colleen Kieran, actually moved from assistant to the planning and construction department, and now she is a planning specialist. And then we'll be doing interviews on Friday for the 4th person, so we can start rounding out our team as we move through the rest of this year. So just want to give you a quick update on that. And then just so as a refresher, I mean, Mr. Tarantino, when we, I think, met last, it was back in the fall of 2019. And at the time, I spent time with yourself and Mr. Pike, and we went through the master plan. I don't know, if anybody's dusted off that master plan or if we want to talk about what that is. I will be doing updates to it as we move into the through the 21-22 school year. Because there's lots of information in there that quite frankly needs to be updated in terms of staff, organizational structure, and a lot's happened. And we also have successfully completed some projects that we want to be able to take out of the master plan and reflect as completed. And so we'll be doing that. And then I just wanted to take a minute to talk about how we build that master plan piece and how we do our project development, just so there's a frame of reference for the work that we're doing as we continue to bring projects forward to you now and in the future. So one of the things that we have, our project development budget tool. It's a spreadsheet. It's very comprehensive, and it builds in all of the elements of a project budget from beginning to end, hard costs and soft costs. All of our contingencies, et cetera. And so as we come up with the concept of a project, we build that budget. And then Armando, I meet with the project managers once a week in one-on-ones. And as we do that, we're constantly revisiting that. We're assessing the development of a project, where we're starting to see risk or impact if we have to make adjustments, and we're modifying that on a regular basis. And it's an important tool for us. And we do that in parallel to what we call the PM checklist, and it's a series of things and tasks that project managers are responsible for ensuring occur on a project. And it's all of our agency coordinations, coordinations with interdepartments throughout the district, fees, anything that you can think of that would go to a project. It's a guide for them all the way through the applications for state funding, which I need to add that to my list. So those are two tools that we use on a regular basis to make sure that the project managers are comprehensively looking at their projects. What's important about the project development tool is that we use the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program tool. I don't know, Trustee Ysidro, if you're familiar with it yet, you may not have seen one yet. You'll see your first one potentially. It'll be your first one on March 8th. And it's a tool that we, as the Planning and Construction Department, we have to basically ask for permission for every dollar that we spend. And it's a great control point for the work that we do. And so when we create a project, we come forward, we ask for permission to approve the project and the associated funding and or elements of that funding. So we're bringing one forward on March 8th. And that's the reference point that we go back to those project development tools, and then I update the CIP according to that. Generally, we go through and we like to hit a project one time on the CIP. We don't like it when we have to come back and ask for more money. That does happen occasionally. I really feel like we're kind of turning the tide from where we've been in the past to our newer practices that we've been implementing over the last 2 years. And so we're going to start to see some things on that become, I think, more consistent and not be coming back for more money, because we're going to be doing that cost forecasting more accurately at the beginning of projects with the tools that we've been putting in place. So I wanted to touch base on that because you will see a pretty active CIP on March 8th. We will be closing several projects. We will be asking for money on some projects. So and that's part of what I wanted to have this conversation for, to refresh Mr. Tarantino, your mind, bring Trustee Ysidro up to speed, because then I think it's going to end up being part of a broader conversation in the board meeting, which is fine. That's what we're here for. When we first started on several of the projects that are actually out in Trustee Tarantino's area, a lot of the CFD projects, it was right when loss of transition was happening a couple of years ago. So we came through and we requested funding for design and or based off of what we could comfortably say the district was in a position to release in terms of funding X amount of dollars. And so thankfully the world is starting to slowly correct itself from a financial perspective, and we have completed the design on projects. And so we're ready. We didn't want to come and ask once and then do it again. We just been holding, and now we're ready to come and do that. And so the March 8th CIP is going to have a lot of activity where we're asking for those cost forecasts through completion of project for approval on those, in addition to closing a couple of little smaller projects, and then there's a couple housekeeping things we need to do on some naming conventions, and we'll go through those if and when if there's questions on those.
Yes.
So I just wanted to share that with you and see if there's questions about it.
I want to ask a question right now.
Yep.
What's the projected cost going to be for the larger projects once we get rid of all the smaller projects? What's the projected cost right now that we're looking at for those kind of projects?
So I'm trying to think about how I want to answer that for you. Are you saying all in terms of projects that we're running right now?
No, I'm saying to you those 2 new projects that you're bringing in, and we're closing up the small ones. I saw the numbers for those. I'm asking for the newer projects. You said they're kind of bigger projects. What's the amount that we're going to be considering?
Yeah. So okay, the projects that'll be on the CIP are pretty much around the track and the field projects. So on average, those projects are averaging about $7 million all in. We already have some elements of those funds. And so it'll range, it'll depend on the school site. It's going to be roughly, I think we're looking at like anywhere from 1.5 to maybe 3 million for each one for a couple of different projects.
So 7 million altogether. That's kind of the.
Yeah, it's not, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just have an idea. I mean, when I'm listening to people that likes to have an idea of where I'm headed to and then how we can get there, and little by little cut it up into chunks to better understand it. And I got it.
Yeah, so one of the things too, and that's a good question, because right now, even with the CFDs, with the district's financial position at this point, we're being allocated about $18 million per year. So that's what I'm working with. And we haven't exceeded that. We didn't touch that last year. We're just going to start getting into some of that this year. And so one of the things I am starting to work on is what that 5-year forecast is, right? And then how I can take the projects that we do have ahead of us that are not the ones we're talking about today, and how I can start staggering them through.
And so these do roll over. These funds roll over for the next year. Okay. And what categorical number would these be kind of running in? Just so I'm trying to understand the whole general fund. What numbers are we talking about here?
So it's a combination of 22 and 49 predominantly. Okay. So 49 is your Melrose CFD, and then you'll hear references sometimes to 21, but 21, 22 is bond.
Gotcha.
So that's going to be anything out of Prop O, and then ultimately we will get there out of Measure DD. We'll probably look and sound a little bit. I think it'll be 22. And then occasionally you will see one-off projects that will come through that might have a Fund 35, because there is Fund 35 monies, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. Or Fund 25, and every now and then there's a 40 in there, but there's generally not a lot of that.
So if I can just chime in real quick, Jeanette, so on those funds, the 21, 22s are the bonds. So that's yes. Prop O. We have Prop DD, but we have not accessed that bond. So that's important kind of caveat there. Fund 25 is developer fee. So for those homes that are not within a CFD, a Melrose district, and they're either going to build new or modify an existing, they pay into that fund, Fund 25. Fund 35 is a state facilities fund. That one is more of a reimbursement when we spend funding. And we invest in our capital infrastructure, then we submit that reimbursement to the state. And so we recently had yes. Some funding that came in for the HVAC project, which we did about 3 or 4 years ago. It just literally came in last week. Really? So so it takes years to get that reimbursement. So that's Fund 35. And then Fund 40 is what's called the special reserve for capital projects. And so that special reserve has to do, for example, when we lease out like Harbor Freight or Napa at L Street, that funding goes into Fund 40. So those are generally the capital funds that I know Janelle is going to get into. I just wanted to kind of provide that. But,
well, and that brings me to the point. Dr. Arancibia, how much has Mr. Segura shared with you as president in terms of an orientation about all this? Have you had an opportunity to meet with him, or?
No. This is my. Okay. That's why I'm saying I'm coming into this.
I mean, because you need information on the PLA You need information on the CFDs.
Yeah.
You need information in terms of Janae is going to go through the projects, but you should have, and then the master plan. You know, I was going to.
She's gonna go over today too. All the issues, some of the issues on the master plans. So this is kind of an annoying. I guess from my that's what I was concerned about. So don't I have any preparatory stuff to get here? No. This is kind of an intro for me, an orientation for me of sorts.
Right. But you need a lot. But you need the resources. Like, you know, I know that Janaea, you said we're going to be updating the master plan, but shouldn't he have a copy of the original one? So like that he has a starting point. I mean, there are some resources that he should be given. And I was hoping that Mr. Segura, as the president, would facilitate that with you and Dr. Arancibia, but I guess that hasn't happened. So how do we get him a copy of the PLA and the extension for the 5-year extension? Because there are some things that I think that he needs as resources.
So I can take care of that. And that's
Okay.
really one of the reasons why I wanted us to come together today, so we could talk about that. So I could get a gauge on these things as well, because my job is easier and more fluid when we are all working with the same understanding of the tools to which we operate. And so this is a good conversation. And we can touch, we can kind of do some new business on the bottom, and I can touch on a couple of things. In terms of the master plan, I think what's important there is to understand the tool and why we have it, and how we will continue to use it moving forward. And so, we can I'm completely open to us talking today, talking about those things, getting those tools out. And then if we need to come back in 8 weeks so we can have a deeper dive on things, I'm completely open to doing that.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Same like with the project labor agreement, and I can touch base on that. And I'm just making some notes on some things I can do, just talk about really fast at the end in terms of kind of general process.
All right, and Dr. Arancibia, if you have any questions, you can just directly work with Janaea.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So in regards to program tools, is there anything right now, very high level, let's say we're at 30,000 foot level, that do you have any questions on anything right now? And I'm making a list of things that I will share back out with you both for reference.
Well, I think
Go
for me,
ahead.
was that a question for me or Janaea, or was it for
either one of you?
I'd like to be able to tell you at the end of this, so then I kind of have my feet wet to be able to see. Okay, makes more sense. Yeah. Okay,
so then I'm gonna keep moving forward a little bit in terms of what we're gonna talk about today. In terms of the next step that I have is on the agenda is project updates. So it's all interconnected. That's why we're talking about it. So we have the master plan. We have Prop O, which Dr. Aguirre has already referenced. And then we have Measure DD, which was approved over 2 years ago now, right? November of 2018. Being optimistic that the light is at the end of the tunnel and we can see opportunity for accessing those funds and doing issuances against O and DD. We have work that we need to and want to start to do in order to have us in a position that when those issuances become available to us, we can have a short list of projects that are ready to go and identified for how we would draw down those funds. And so it is connected to the master plan, but then we also need to start talking about what our project priorities are. And that was one of the other reasons why I wanted us to come together today, right? So a lot's happened, a lot is happening. So what is the focus that we want to bring forward as a district? What recommendations that I would see as the top priorities that I would be bringing to the board as approval? And then if there's anything that's out there for you all that you think that we should be taking into consideration while we're going through this process. And I do see it as something that will ultimately be very collaborative in nature. And we'll have, perspective coming in, not just from planning and construction, but from maintenance, from trustees, from administrators, community. We'll be going through that kind of process all over again on some level or another with regard to making those determinations about projects moving forward. And it's a really big, complicated conversation sometimes. So I literally just want to like start kind of laying the foundation for it so we can keep building on that conversation. So I'm dusting off my project prioritization tools that we used when we did the Measure C issuance for Prop O. And we take a lot of things into consideration when we identify projects. We look at the age of facilities. We look at obvious needs on a campus. We have looked and we will continue to look at dollars already expensed on campuses because there is some decent disparity on some of our campuses in terms of allocations that they've received versus others. There's a series of things that we put into that. We look at fire life safety compliance. We look at path of travel, ADA, right? That's how the elevator, for example, which we'll touch on in a few minutes, got brought forward under issuance C for Prop O. And so just kind of looking at that tool and then seeing how we can round it out and make it more efficient for identification of projects. So that's going to be a big piece for us, and I'm excited about it, and it's a little overwhelming as well in terms of the magnitude of facility needs that our district has and how we prioritize the projects that we're going to bring forward within those funds that will be available to us. With DD, the anticipation is that when we finally get to accessing those funds and doing a sale, it's going to be about $100 million. Right now, O is tracking, I'm going to safely say like 25 million. But on top of that, Dr. Geary, when he was clarifying on some of the funds, that Fund 35, it's an important piece. We actually have a decent amount of money sitting in Fund 35 from previous cash state match funds from years ago. It's just been sitting there. Well, with the HVAC project, we put together through all of our applications, and it's a grind. You have to just keep submitting. It's like we feel like, didn't we just sign that? And they just keep sending you the same forms over and over again on slightly different. But we just received $15 million back from our HVAC project, which is significant in nature. And so those are funds that we also will potentially have the opportunity to really look at how we would repurpose those funds back to our facilities, which $15 million plus about another 15 that we already have, that's substantial in nature. It is, and it does need to be part of a much broader conversation in terms of what is our long-term and short-term objectives and how can we be really efficient. And so those are things that are happening. The other piece that ties into the master plan piece and the project prioritization is we've been doing, we brought on Trustee Tarantino, you'll remember the Davis demographics for them to do a 7, it ends up being a 10-year demographics forecast for the district. We have the initial reports back and we're beginning to digest them, and ultimately Dr. Geary, and I'm sure that's all going to come forward in a presentation of some form, and we're just not there yet. But there's significant impact coming. And it's not just to us, it's happening statewide. Folks are not having, children, folks are leaving the state of California. There's lots of things happening, but we will be seeing in pretty short order. We already have been in declining, but that drop is going to continue to move rapidly. And so how does that impact how we view our capital facilities, and how can we be even more precise about the work that we're going to do? And so those are part of those conversations that we need to be having, and they may be difficult to have at certain times. So just things that we need to start thinking about. So while we're, maintaining our CFD sites, that, we're also looking at how to, Ron Malone, he's the director of maintenance. We talk all the time about, when we're talking about this conversation, we have our CFDs, sites, and we have the capacity to do rehabilitation on those sites, right? So on my board right now, I'm sitting here looking at Eastlake High School projects that we have on the list because they're 30 years old. They have the original carpet in them. They haven't been painted on the interior or the exterior. The best way for us to maintain those facilities is for us to put money into those facilities. And they're prettier and shinier than some of our other campuses. But they won't be if we don't take care of them. And so that too, that maintenance piece and that deferred maintenance piece is part of how we're looking at our capital facilities. It's not just, oh, hey, yay, we have money to go build something new or to improve something, but it's also about our maintenance. And so all of that is intertwined into our master plan and our project prioritization and determinations. So I just wanted to touch on those things really fast. Any questions in that area? That's a really big conversation that we could go in like 10 different bird walks on.
Yeah. I actually don't want to get into specifics of that because I think, yeah, we'll go down rabbit holes that we probably don't want to go into tonight.
Perfect. Okay.
And I'll take that opportunity to say I would say running, but we don't run nowadays. We just Zoom. And so I'm heading off to a meeting with principals. Janaea is the expert in this field, and she'll continue providing the briefing. So thank you, Janaea. Thank you, trustees. Bye, Yoli. Bye, everybody.
So before I get into doing the project update, I did want to touch base on a couple of other things really fast. Just because you brought it up, Mr. Tarantino, about the project labor agreement. So we have a project labor agreement, we all know that. And it's for projects that the final estimate for the project by the design professional, when it's over $1 million, that is the determining factor for when our projects are PLA. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page about that. Moving forward, majority of our projects are all going to be PLA. But I wasn't sure if you were aware of that. The only other thing I want to touch base on in terms of, before I jump to projects, is I am going to be putting out an RFQ for estimating services. It's an important tool that we need to have in our toolbox because we're so lean and because the market has been changing so much in the last couple of years with costs. And because of the way that our master plan is designed, it's a live document that we can manipulate at any time with costs that are current. And we have construction managers and I have architects, but they all have a foot in the door, right? And I need that third party completely separate from that, who can give us current cost per square foot for modernization or new construction or escalation. And so that'll be going out here, and that purpose is for me to be able to use as a resource from a program perspective, so we can be as live and current as possible with costs moving forward in our forecasting. Okay, so let's get to projects. I have a little bit of a PowerPoint. It has some renderings of things that we're in motion with and or are coming. It's not encompassing of everything, so I'm going to walk you guys through projects that we have that are in construction, and then kind of the different phases of where things are at. And so I'm gonna start to share my screen with you. So just give that a second and click on that one and let me know when you can see my screen. Can you see it?
Yeah,
I think it's at the end though. It says thank you.
Oh, all right. See you later.
Thank you, Janaea. Okay, meeting adjourned. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Okay, we can't laugh at ourselves. Who can we laugh at? So we've had a couple of low-lying, and this is a combination of Propo and CFD. I'm just giving the projects to you. Not in here, but we did have recently the Sioux High Theater. We finally have completed Mr. Tarantino, if you remember, that building was designed with no PA system, emergency communication system within the theater. So that's been resolved and that construction is completed. We're processing paperwork and we'll be closing that out on the March 8th CIP. The next project, well, here I'm just going to give you this little soundbite that we finished, was the Olympian High School track and field refurbishment. Somebody went out and took fancy photos, and so this is one of them. But we basically, and this is going to be a reoccurring theme in some of these slides. But Olympian's field was deteriorating, which was kind of unusual considering its age. We went in, we replaced the track, the field. You can't really see it, but back in the left-hand corner where the long jump, triple jump, and the shot put areas are, they are all actually now synthetic turf and grass. It's really nice. There's no more gopher holes or any of those sorts of things. And the shot put area is all black mesh fence, and it's a fenced in. It's really nice. It's really sharp looking. Scoreboard's been refurbished. This project also, the East Hills Academy quad got synthetic turf installed there. And then the other thing that happened here was Olympian has 2 weird parking lots, and those parking lots were connected. So you can drive through from one to the other now, and there's a right turn egress that has not been available. And so that has now been corrected and will be able to be utilized by students and parents when we have a full return to campus. So this project's done, just sharing that photo with you. And then the other one that is literally, we got elevator inspection approvals today, but this is for the Chula Vista elevator. The 100 building on the face of the campus did not have an elevator. And so students who were ambulatory challenged could not access the second floor. And so this has been remedied. This is exactly what this looks like. If you drive by, I'm actually shocked with how nice it looks, and it just kind of folds right in. It blended much more seamlessly than I thought that it might actually do, even though the renderings showed that it would. But this work is completed, and we'll be closing out that project. You won't see that probably until we come back with CIP in May due to the closeout process for projects. Any questions on either one of these? All right, and then the other thing that we have that's active construction right now is the National City Adult School fencing, perimeter fencing. There's a very active community after hours over in that area. And so for safety measures, we've needed to put in some fence perimeter barriers. And so that's happening. We're coming across the finish line. That's been a little bit of a thing, but we're getting there. And then moving into projects that are DSA approved, and we are actively starting to package to put out on the street. I don't have a picture of it, but one of them is the Sioux High concession stand. It's been an ongoing, it's like the final, I think this is phase 5. That project's been in motion for years, way before I even came into the district. And so we're finally going to be in a position that we'll be putting that project together, packaging it up and putting it on the street. And then also the project you see right here in front of you, finally coming across the finish line with Hillside Middle School modernization of building 600. It's all science classrooms. And this is a snapshot of what the interiors of those spaces would look like. I did not share an exterior rendering with you. We have not agreed upon the paint colors, and it's quite a conversation. And so I didn't want to give a visual that would be misleading. And so I held back on that. This is a project that's important for us to touch on really fast. When we bring this forward on the CIP on March 8th, this project has been alive. I think, Mr. Tarantino, this project was in motion before you were even a board member and I even worked for the district. And one thing we know is that it was completely underfunded from conception. And so we've been holding on this one. We've removed part of it. They were going to add new building. We took the new building away, left just the modernization piece. We've refined the budget. We've done a lot of work. There's extensive work that's going to need to happen here. But you'll see us asking for, we're finally coming and asking for that difference that's needed to get this project across the finish line. And I think the ask is like 2.1, and it's coming out of the Propo contingency. And we've been sitting on that money, knowing very deliberately for about a year and a half now that that's where we were going to come looking for that money. So you'll see that coming forward here. We'll be looking to put that project on the street. They're working on releasing the bid within like 2 weeks of the March 8th board meeting. Okay. Then the next one is Bonita Vista High School track and field. So this image right here is just kind of a layout, right? So it's a replacement of the entire track and field, new bleachers, new lights, a little bit of a sound system. One thing that's not reflected in here is this area. I don't know if you can see my cursor, this kind of no man's land that sits on that south part of the southwest corner of that parking lot.
That's a little empty lot. Yeah.
Empty lot, useless lot. We're actually, you both have probably had the wonderful pleasure of noticing our band and flag students in the evening, generally in the dark, right, with vehicles driving by them, practicing. It drives me insane because I pass them all the time as well on my way home. And we have gone round and round, but this whole area is actually going to be asphalted in. It's going to have a sidewalk that comes from the pedestrian right away at the street and into the face of the new facility. It's going to be fenced in. There's going to be soft pedestrian lighting, and this entire thing is designed for all the student activity that's happening down here in the parking lot will happen here.
Okay.
This is reflected inside the environmental impact report, which you may have seen in the Friday updates. I've been, sending little peppered messages on that because that's an active process right now. We're in our 45-day window for comments to be received. Trustee Ancibia, for your reference, this is kind of round 2 of that process. They put there was a
Round 2 out of how many?
this is the second one.
But does it go like a certain amount, or do we want to get it in one round, or does normally? Or
yes, when you do an environmental impact report, you always want it to be done on the first time.
Good.
Unfortunately, that didn't happen. This was several years ago. There were some questions. There was a lot of things I think happening at the time, and so it got put on the back burner. And since then, there's been other things that have happened with other projects. And so a new design team was brought forward. I'll be there in a sec. The new design team was brought forward. We reimagined the project, tightened it up, went back to the EIR report, the same original report. And the one that's posted right now has all the original documentation in it, plus all the edits that are in alignment with the scope that we have now. And so, and that's what's out for the public to see and for them to be reviewing.
Okay. So my question is, was the original the original environmental impact report, was it just bogged down by NIMBYs that next door that didn't want to have the changes made to the school site, or is it something more complex than that?
So my understanding is we received 3 comments from the public, all of which were probably very reasonable comments, but all within absolute thresholds for approval of the EIR as it stood. Because part of what we task, our environmental impact teams to go look at is, what are the impacts? And do they exceed the levels of reasonableness and the city ordinances, et cetera? Right. And then our job is to make sure we're compressing everything to fit within those things. Right. And that it was met the first time, and it's still being met now. So. Okay. There's a definite feeling that there's a very solid document that's out there for the public right now.
Just asking. Thank you.
Yeah. And then this is a glimpse of what that place is going to look like. I'm very personally excited about this project. So this is what the entry from the parking lot will look like when you're driving down 8th Street now. You'll look over. This is the restroom concession building for home and visitor side, the field and the track and field. The bleachers, or you can see them over here on the sides, where the bleachers will go up to 2,000 capacity, majority being on the home side. And the way that we're bidding the project, although I think things are trending in the right direction, we designed this with the intention that on the home side, we would only be able to put in like 700 bleachers from a cost standpoint, because when we first started designing this project, it was like 2 years ago when things were out of control with construction costs. Every time our estimates were coming in, the numbers were jumping significantly. So for a minute, we were thinking we were not going to be able to afford it, but we are. So we designed this in a way that only one section, like the center section, would go in at like 700 seats, but we were putting in all the foundational structure for it to be expanded. And then the rest of the bleachers would be in like an adult into the project. Right now, we are looking at the fact that we were going to be able to install the full 2,000 seats at the beginning of the project, which I prefer. It's one of those things of, if you don't do it now, when are you ever really going to get back to it? Right. But for a minute, it wasn't looking like we could afford it financially, and it is trending differently now. So it's a great thing. And then just south of this, kind of, at the base of these stairs is where it would take you over to that southwest corner that we were just talking about. So this construction, we got, or it's in DSA for approval right now, and DSA has been turning projects around. With all the steps on the EIR, we will not be in a position to put this project on the street until that's completed 100%. So I think it's the November board meeting. I think the last November board meeting, it might be the first May board meeting now. We'll bring forward the EIR for you all as a Board of Trustees to approve. Once that's happened, then there's a responses back and forth that need to happen, but there's still a 30-day window at the end that we have to sit and hold, that somebody could technically take action if they wanted to. And so we have to wait till that 30 days has passed, then we can put the project out on the street for construction, and we'll be moving on that swiftly. I do need to say that there's multiple track and field projects, and there is very broad and very clear conversations happening with the school sites, with compliance, with athletics around sports. Obviously, it's a sensitive subject right now. And the timing of some of these and how we can support school facilities and athletics while we're also improving their facilities, especially with the timing of COVID and everything, right? It's like the perfect storm. So we will continue to take a look at that and assessing it and pushing and pulling where we can. But we're really looking for the school communities to help be our guides, in addition to athletics at the district level and compliance, to make sure that we can meet all the objectives and not be compromising students' access to fields and to practices and things like that. So,
Janae, I had a question.
Yes, sir.
I know that in the past, when we were going back and forth in terms of the position of the field and all of that, the CBOC was very involved. Are they being kept apprised of where we are with this project, specifically with this project, because they really had a hand in all that we went through, and they were very involved. So are you? And I don't know how often they're meeting now. I know that when Mr. Marinovich was the chair, they were meeting like almost every month. I don't know what the rotation is now. And so if you could kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we're meeting bi-monthly with the CBOC.
Okay.
So we go back again on, it's St. Patrick's Day. It's like my national holiday, and we're gonna have a CBOC meeting. So that's what I'll be doing.
Hopefully it won't last too long. Hopefully.
And so I do at the CBOC. I always go through all of our projects and give status updates of where we are and what activity is occurring. And so that practice has not changed.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
Okay. All right, next project, which I'm happy to say, both stamped out of DSA yesterday and today. So we will be putting this project on the street. Softball, Eastlake High School softball Title IX is grossly, it's a Title IX project, Trustee Adam Sebia, because of the Eastlake High School boys baseball program facility they're apples and oranges. So we're going to make them apples and apples. And this project is officially approved at DSA. And we will be, I need to update my little construction date there. I missed that. Anyway, got it right there. But this is what this will ultimately look like once we're completed. So there's a little rendering of that. Happening simultaneously to the softball is the rehab of I'm sorry, I apologize for this. It's the best thing that they could give me today. But the replacement, rehabilitation of Eastlake's track and field, which is in dire need. There's some ramp work that will happen in the corner. And then also some of those nice new standards that we put in for the synthetic, track, long jump, triple jump, and the shot put areas. Those little standards that we incorporated at Olympian will get peppered into this project as well. These two projects will be bid together, and we will probably see this on the street within the matter of a couple weeks.
Okay.
So we can get jumping. The site is ready to go on that. And then let's see what's next. So pending DSA. Yeah, so the next one is, I think I missed a step, but that's okay. It's down here. We can do these together. San Ysidro has two projects that are in motion right now. One is ROTC, where we're basically replacing the existing ROTC. The existing facility was just kind of dropped in, like literally into dirt, portables into dirt, not even a foundation underneath them. So the buildings were rotting and not doing awesome. So, and the other thing with that facility is that the facility actually sat outside the fence lines, the perimeter lines of the campus. And so students had to walk out of the fences to get to their facility, very remote and kind of isolated. So this is what their new facility will start looking like here in a second. And then this is what it really will look like. And so what you can see here is these fence lines right here, actually, like the gym is just to the left of this, right? And up at a little higher elevation. So this starts to fold their fence line into from the gym area, and then it runs all the way down to Caliente, and it pulls the facility, it turns the facility around and orients the face of it right here towards the campus.
Or the campus
the back
again,
of it,
yeah.
right, so it's more protected, and then the back of it is actually up out at Caliente. So like this is the Caliente, so this is what you'll see those buildings right at almost at the street, and then you'd be looking at the gym, but it wraps them in, and there's a retaining wall that gets built, and it kind of folds them into that campus in a different way, and definitely gives them the appropriate drill locations and facility that this program is pretty exceptional in terms of its awards and the things that it does. So it's going to give them the proper facility that they need. So this one is you'll probably see this one going out for construction in the fall. What you will see, I'm going to be really busy on March 8th board meeting. You will see a piggyback approval coming through on this project. Are you both familiar with piggybacks as it relates to construction? It's generally, because this is going to be a portable facility, modular facility in nature with a stucco finish. So we utilize the piggyback from another school district and bring that forward. And we've already vetted that and selected the firm. And so we'll be bringing that forward for approval. And then this is their track and field. That's also being rehabbed as well. And same amenities as the other campus. And it's going to look really nice when it's all finished. There's actually a new sidewalk being put around the perimeter of this due to drainage issues that they're having. So, and then the other one that is officially pending DSA approval as of yesterday, hot topic of the year, boom, Bonita Vista High School aquatics and central campus upgrades. This project is officially submitted to DSA. We are going to be putting this sign out front of that campus in probably the next week or two. As soon as they can get it done, your names are on it. And this project, it's going to move fast. It's going to move so fast. Mr. Tarantino, do you remember with the HVAC, like it felt like it took us forever, and then all of a sudden they're done? And that's how this is going to feel. And so they submitted to DSA today. On Monday. And then what happens is they're already starting to do put together the bidding and the procurement process with the subs. I mean, that's going to start to happen through March. So as this project comes out of DSA and it's anticipated to kick out, like we'll probably have the initial comments back in the next 6 to 8 weeks at best. They'll respond, and then we'll have plans. So they're anticipating right now that we're going to have like an approved set of plans end of April or so. They will already have like 3/4 of the bidding process completed. They'll finalize that, and they're anticipating boots on the ground by June 1st. So it's kind of exciting. We already have the ceramics class is part of that modernization. A few years back, there was one building, 2 classrooms. We modernized one half of the building. We're going to go back and finish that other half, which is the ceramics classroom. That's already been DSA approved. It's ready to go. And so this is what this is going to look like. It's going to be very exciting. So those are the end of my pictures that I have for you for this round. But I do want to touch base. Yes. Questions?
May I make a suggestion? It says opening December of 2021 or 2022. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, there's been so much pushback from the community in terms of that this project is over budget and all of that other stuff. Would it be in our best interest to say aquatics facility and rehabilitation? So like that, they know that it's an entire package as opposed to the money that's being spent is not just for the aquatics facility. Has anyone given that any thought, or am I just being overly sensitive?
So you're not. I think what really is interesting, it's a really good point that you bring up, is so the pool is a bigger pool, right? It's a significantly larger pool than what currently exists. All the other amenities that are there already also exist. There is already a building that is the locker room building. With the new one, we did add a concession stand component to it. And the nice thing about that concession stand is it's going to be right about here. And so they can actually use it for the stadium as well. So it's going to have dual purpose. So
Correct.
I think yes, I mean, we can work on some of that messaging when we push this out.
Okay.
I hear what you're saying. I also think that there's, the word aquatics has folks, I think, get worked up and kind of excited about that.
Oh, no, I'm
They
not
are
saying to
really
remove
thinking-
it.
Yeah.
I just, we know that the cost escalated because there's other issues involved. And again, like I said, we've endured pushback from the community that the aquatic facility is, way over budget and what happened and all that stuff. I was just thinking, I was just trying to minimize the context that I would get. So that's all.
No,
I was being selfish.
Yeah,
I was
no, I
being
understand that.
selfish.
Okay, fair enough. So we can take that under consideration and see how we can work on some of that language.
No, but I think the aquatics should stay. I mean,
The aquatics has to stay. It's built into all the documents.
It's just, anyway, I'll leave that up to you guys.
Okay. And then I just wanted to share, we have a variety of projects that are kind of in a holding pattern, to be honest, just due to the balancing of cash flow and then also staffing. And so I'm just going to run through them really fast. I don't have visuals, but still out there that we're actively working on is the Eastlake Middle shade structure. Olympian High School new building, which is a 12 classroom building that would go right into the center of campus. Eastlake High School library modernization, with the main focus being taking half of the library and converting it into special education life skills suites. And then also the Eastlake High School new building, because we have so many portables over there. There's parking lot access issues. And so there's a location between the gym and the theater that has been identified for a new building, and we kind of put those projects on hold. Some of that ties back to some of the Davis demographic studies, so we could really be looking at things to make sure we're very precise in the work that we're doing, so we don't overbuild, because that can happen really fast with some of the things that we're starting to see as a potential with student enrollments. The other one is the San Ysidro High School.
Can I ask a question? I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, I've read, and I'm kind of, the more I'm hearing about it, the more and more I'm getting frustrated. It seems to me that we're really investing a lot of money in Eastlake, and I know that Bonita Vista, it's pretty much falling apart, and we're investing in, I mean, I'm getting frustrated hearing this, because I walked into my girls' schools, and they're falling apart in certain buildings. Certain buildings are literally falling apart, and I'm just kind of like laughing. We're spending money on pretty shiny things. I mean, I hate to sound like that, but I see it as pretty shiny things of sports, which is great. But where my kids, even if my kids were involved in the sport, they'd be involved in one place, one time a day, whereas the classroom, every child would be in working with. So I'm kind of like, is that normal, or is this just kind of like?
So welcome to the frustrating world of school facilities. And it really comes down to funding and what creates the funding, right? So with the CFDs, there's money that we are required and obligated to spend. And so our approach on that is that we are looking at it from more of a rehabilitation, predominantly as rehabilitation, like I was, talking about in terms of the maintenance. So looking at those bigger things to maintain them, so doing that. The problem is, because we don't have access to issuances on Propo or on Measure DD, we become very gridlocked in what we can do for our other facilities.
And the thing is, this is my concern, because in the end all be all, you're worried about enrollment. We're all worried about enrollment. So tell me how enrollment's going to be impacted by the issues of schools falling apart, where we can have more growth on, And this is I just think that I'm going to bring this up more with my colleagues on the board, but I think that this is really concerning to me. Because it's like, in the end all be all, this becomes an equity question too, right? Where a neighborhood receives more and more improvements, and then the other neighborhood does not receive the improvements, precisely because it's kind of like we're continuing to perpetuate the disparities that we have because of the way that the funding is set up and everything as well.
I absolutely understand your frustration. 100%. And it is, it's we are going to have a much broader, larger conversation that's in front of us that we're going to really need to be pulling apart. And there's a lot of different layers to it, and none of it's easy. And it is very frustrating. And so that's why being really precise in some of the work that we're doing is important, so that we can be really, like, when we do have those bond dollars become available to us, we can be really deliberate in the work that we're doing and where those are allocated in the apportionments that are going to those campuses.
And I'm not blaming you.
I know.
I'm calling out Frank here to help us out to make sure that happens for Bonita Vista as much as it's happening over at Eastlake, when the time comes. Because I feel that this is, we're really, to get you on my side to help us out, because I can tell you that that the school is literally falling apart. And I'm kind of cracking up, and I feel bad telling my daughter, this is where your science building is going to be, and literally the paint's peeling off, or there's dry rot still there. So this is something that is kind of concerning to me,
I definitely understand. Absolutely, I do. And I do look forward to those conversations that are out there. So let's see what's next. I wanted to give a quick update on.
You had mentioned San Ysidro.
Oh, I did.
Janaea, but you never finished. San Ysidro what?
CTE, but that project's on hold. And I'm not really sure what the future of that project would be at this point. I think we'll remain in kind of a long-term holding pattern. We got through the programming pieces, but that one's going to stay on hold. And the other thing that we have that is out there is the barrel roofs at Olympian, Otay Ranch, and San Ysidro. They were not installed properly, and so we're starting to see what's happening because they were not installed properly. The fasteners to those roof systems are becoming compromised, and so that's one of the other things that we have that we need to start tackling is what's the remediation for that, and what's that impact, because that cost impact could actually be fairly significant, which is can be covered underneath the CFDs, but that is one thing that we need to start pulling apart, because we already did a mild remediation to San Ysidro, and the maintenance has already had to go back and then redo sections of it as well. So because the wind loads that they get up there. So, okay. So any other questions on projects? I mean, I know that's a lot of information, but that's why I wanted to do this, so we can, we need to start making this every couple months or every, 3 or 4 months, we can do that.
Yeah, I think that we probably need to do that every 3 months. I think would be good. Jenny, I need to see, okay, what are the next, now I'm going to throw the questions out for you. You asked me, what am I going to need? I'm going to need the total accounting of the numbers that we have, that, that 15 million, now 30 million that we have, that's kind of coming to us, kind of an understanding of where it's coming from, a listing of it. I'd like to be able to see what the queue is after the projects that you've just listed out, because I think that becomes a point of discussion for us at the next meeting that we have, and we should be actually conversing as to, if we need to reschedule or think about different things, or can we do that? How can we move forward doing that?
So there currently is not a queue.
Okay.
That we did one. It was 2016. Was it 2016? I think was the last issuance. And then that's what funded that's what funded the HVAC project. So it's been that long since we've done that. And when I was talking about that tool, in my mind, a lot has changed. Right. And so we have an opportunity to go back to the beginnings. There are some glaring and obvious places for us to start.
Yep.
And then to me, the bigger conversation is when we see what's happening with just things in general with facilities and enrollments and things like that. What's our area of focus? Are we going to do mods, like really deep saturated modernizations like we're going to do for the Hilltop Middle School 600 building science? And or are we going to say, no, we're going to remove buildings and build some new stuff? There's pros and cons in both directions.
Right.
Just to be honest, one of our biggest challenges right now for me, when I'm looking at stuff is how some of the work was done historically that was considered to be modernizations. I'm not sure about that. Right. And it really has created a situation that didn't remediate, but has just exacerbated issues.
Right.
And
It's-
so
Yeah,
I think
it's,
there's an opportunity for us to look at how we can be deliberate in remediating some of that and really improving our school facilities. And so,
absolutely.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
there's a fun conversation to be had for sure.
No, and I'm kind of surprised that I feel like just seeing things here that there was not much advocacy given to my areas for a while, and it's at least that's what I'm sitting here looking at. But we're going to I'm going to change that. I think that yeah, I literally gone to the teacher nights over at the kids' school, and I'm like going, ooh, I went to school here, and I saw that same building. It's the same way it was when I was a student here 40 years ago.
Did you go to Bonita?
Yeah, I'm gonna be 1989.
I had a very fun meeting at Bonita a couple years ago. It lasted a really long time, and everything that was said at that meeting was 100% on point.
Yep.
So we have an opportunity to move that ball, and we will move it. It takes perseverance is really what it comes down to, and us being focused about what we're doing. And you know, there's the finance team is doing their part with getting our financial situation moving in the right direction, and that has to happen. That is the first and most important thing to happen to provide the opportunity for us to have access to funds. So, okay, really fast, because I don't want to keep you guys much longer. Other things that I just wanted to touch base. I'm going to merge the last couple items together, maintenance and COVID and everything. Maintenance, I really believe needs to always be a part of the conversation about facilities, because it's not just facilities, planning, construction, it is school facilities, which is maintenance. And so Ron, we do those little updates to you all every week that you're seeing, and maintenance always has the facility focus program, and his team, this program is robust. They go out, they do full system assessments, updates, trainings for fire, life safety, HVAC, mechanical, everything, plus extra every week on every campus. Each campus gets it every 6 months, and we're taking advantage of that for the ionizer installation for all the campuses. So as they're going on to those campuses, in 1 week's time, each campus is being done at 100%. So it's been really great. They've also gone through, and each campus they've taken 2 drinking fountains on each campus to create more hand sanitization stations. And they've taken off the drinking fountain piece and actually put in like just a regular, what do you call it? Thank you. And then they've also installed on the wall paper towel dispensers and soap dispensers. But what's cool about it is they can be taken down and put away. So they're like pop-up hand sanitization stations. 2 of those will be available on every campus by March 8th. And then they've also installed hydration, 1 extra bottle hydration station on each campus. Many of them already have 1, but they've added at least 1 more. And then they're also doing custom requests for those desktop barriers. Our first round was not the most glamorous, but we were also responding to what materials we could get our hands on when COVID first, showed up on the scene. They now have a cool carbonite that looks like plexiglass, and they're making really nice custom stuff for folks' desks and things like that. So they've really been knocking it all out and just doing an incredible job. In addition to Southwest High School is going to be painted this summer in its entirety, and they're doing consistent flooring and asphalt replacements throughout the district. A lot of heavy asphalt work happening in the coming months down at Bonita Vista. So I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to Mr. Malone and his team for their constant work that they're doing to keep our facilities as maintained as best as possible. And so I think that's an important piece out there. Other than that, I don't have anything else for you for today. I think that's a lot of information. It's been a long time.
Yeah. But can I get you're such a wonderful, you're a good instructor, and I really appreciate what you're doing, and the way that you're explaining it is really it helps me, because it's like and this is a chunk. I think that the PLAs I have an understanding of. I mean, of what we're trying to do and the numbers, but I do need to see. So if we don't have a queue list, what is the process for creating a queue list? How are we going to proceed forward in the next meetings? I'd like to see, what is feasible. And I agree with you today. You're absolutely right about tearing down. Like, I think half of Bonita Vista needs to be torn down, to be honest. I mean, half of Bonita Vista Middle for sure. Bonita Vista High School, that's a whole different conversation, because I think that there are a lot of things going on. But I just think that I'm fascinated with the fact that literally fascinated and disturbed by the fact that there's literally the same walls and paint that 35 years ago I was a student over at Bonita Vista Middle, and it's pretty much the same. There's been no improvement. So those are the things we have to have conversations about, and I'm really appreciative of all the information. But I any kind of data that you can send to me directly as a file, and I'll scan it over and look it over, please.
I can do that. And what I would actually suggest, because these conversations can go big and go sideways really fast.
Right.
And so we want to be really thoughtful in the work that we're doing. Dr. Aguirre and I talk about this stuff all the time.
Right.
And so what I would actually suggest is for me to get you the links and everything you need for the master plan, for you to start to kind of absorb that information. I can share with you the tool that we used for the last basically we took projects from the master plan and we punched them into this thing and it kicked it out. I don't really love that tool. I think there's improvements that could happen there. Mm-hmm. But let me send you that stuff. Let's schedule another meeting for 3 months from now, or even a little bit less. And then we can make that a focus, little workshop where we talk about those things. So you can really start to understand those pieces.
Right.
And typically what we've done in the past, when we're ready to start really opening the conversation for bigger, and I don't think we're there. I think there's a lot of things happening right now. I think that's a mid to summer maybe conversation, but typically we've done things like a workshop or something else that's more focused. So the entire board is a part of that conversation. I want to be careful about what I do say right now, because I really think part of that needs to default to kind of Dr. Aguirre and some of the other pieces that are at play right now with regards to like the Davis demographic study. That alone is a much bigger conversation. So I don't want to step all the way into that just yet.
No. And I totally get you. No, I understood. No, I just think that we need to have those conversations. And also it seems to me that we're going to have movement. So how are we going to move forward in the future? And I think that's very, very important, So the current, like in the back of my mind, plan that I want to be ready for, and I think that everybody's kind of hoping optimistically for, and you probably know a lot more, and I'm good with that, is the target is a year from now to be ready, to be in a place that we know we have our list identified, we have our projects identified, we can go to market for issuance. That year may get pulled up a little bit more and it may get pushed back, right? But so if the target is that a year from now we want to be ready to go to market, in my mind, and it's a little daunting to think about, but I want us to have that project list locked in by like December, January, right? So we're shelf ready. Absolutely, because without a plan, we're going to be sitting there stalling and spinning our wheels, doing nothing for about 6 months to a year.
No, and we don't want to do that because it'll already feel that way because of the fact that we need to do the design. Right. And those are the things that are of interest to me to dive into with Dr. Salkelt with the Fund 35.
Yeah.
As things continue to open up and she's aligning other things, that money's been kind of in a holding pattern for obvious reasons, right? And so as that starts to hopefully shift a little bit, one of the things that will be of interest as we start to identify that project list, I can't take Prop O dollars, even if I have any left, and go do any design for what would ultimately be a Measure DD project, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I could possibly, and that's where we need to dive in on our side and really have her lens from a financial perspective. Could we take 35 and do design for DD?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So those are the kinds of things I want us to figure out how we can be pushing and pulling.
Absolutely.
In the work that we've been doing so far, we've been very methodical about, with DSA, once we get approvals for DSA, we have 4 years. After 4 years, the project loses its shelf life, and then you have to go back and then you're re-subjected to new code, which you're basically redesigning. And so even the projects we have on hold, I've stopped them at a point. So we're not going to have those impacts, so we can continue to be very deliberate in our design. So I don't know. There's a lot of pieces. It just keeps, that we're managing. Yeah.
No, I thank you so much for this information. It's my eyes have been opened up. I really appreciate it. But I think that the data in terms of the numbers and where we're at. I think those are, and what the master plan, please, the master plan, if you could send it over to me, that'd be really, really wonderful as well. I think that would really help me kind of process a little bit more.
Well, what I love about the master plan, I'm going to send it to you. It'll be all PDF, but that master plan has become a live document. So Heather McMillan, who our project manager, who's no longer with us, was kind of an Excel genius and nerd at the same time, which I took advantage of while she was here. And one of the things that she did was she took that master plan and she put, I don't know how she did it. She built it into Excel. So we can actually, like, for projects example, where it says Olympian High Track and Field, when we close that project out on the CIP, I'm going to go zero that thing out and mark completed on there in that master plan. So,
Wow.
and we have it built in a way that the master plan shows what costs or projects would be based off of modernization. And we also did it where we did forecasts of, well, if we were going to build a new building, here's where it may go. We're not married to where it will go, but here's also what the cost forecasting would be. So we can choose option A or option B. And once we choose option B, then we can take A out.
Yeah.
So
smart, very smart. Good
good.
job.
Thanks.
Good.
Okay. I will make a list of things to send to you. If you have any other questions, please just send me an email and we'll zip over whatever you need. Tarantino, you know that's always available to you. Okay?
I know.
I know.
Okay, if there's no other business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Janaea, for
Pleasure.
a great meeting.
Yep.
As
you.
always,
Okay.
you're really out.
Thank you.
Take care.
So our next meeting, 3 months?
3 months.
3
Yes.
months.
Okay,
I don't know if Deanne's actually listening, but we'll get with you.
Bye, Yolanda. Bye, Manny. Bye,
Okay.
Thank
Janae.
you. Bye, Manny.
Frank.
Thank you,
All right.
Deanne. Thank you,
Bye.
Manny.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
bye. Thank you, Yoli.